The gravel crunched beneath his boots as he stepped out of the truck, the late afternoon sun bleeding gold through a canopy of towering pines. The air smelled like cedar and damp earth, and somewhere in the distance, a creek murmured over smooth stones. He stood for a moment, taking it all in the crooked wooden cabin nestled in the clearing, the chimney still puffing faint smoke, the porch sagging under the weight of time. It looked just like the photograph attached to the inheritance letter. Except, he was supposed to be the only one here. Supposed to be alone. But he wasn't. 5 figures stood on the porch, completely still, like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. They weren't just women, they were giants. Tall, broad-shouldered, and thick with muscle like carved statues of frontier goddesses. Each one of them wore work clothes, heavy denim, rolled-up sleeves, dirt on their boots and sawdust in their hair. They didn't look startled. They didn't even look curious. They looked prepared. Ready. The tallest of the 5 stepped forward, arms crossed over her chest, her neck thick with muscle, her braided hair falling like a whip over one shoulder. Her eyes were sharp, cold, ancient, somehow. "You're late," she said, voice deep and level, as if she were stating a fact rather than offering a greeting. He blinked. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The inheritance lawyer had said the cabin had been vacant since the previous owner's death. No records of tenants, no family. Just a handwritten clause tucked into the back of the will that granted him the land. He managed, gripping the strap of his duffel bag. "I think there's been a mistake. This cabin is mine now." His voice sounded weak in the clearing, like the trees were swallowing it. The second woman stepped down onto the porch, her boots thudding heavily against the wooden steps. She was slightly shorter but no less imposing, with dark eyes and arms like she could snap a fence post in half without breaking a sweat. "It is yours," she said calmly. "We knew you'd come eventually. Been 20 years. He stared at her, stunned. Her voice was softer than the first's, almost gentle, but the words made his spine tighten. 20 years, he echoed. "You've been living here, this whole time?" The third sister leaned against the porch rail, her copper hair catching the sunlight like a flame. She looked amused, but there was something predatory in the way her eyes roved over him, like she was deciding if he was real, or maybe edible. "Our father told us you'd come," she said the land would call you when it was ready. He took a step back, heart pounding. The 4th and 5th women stood in silence, side by side, watching. One of them was massive, even among the others taller than him by a head, arms folded across a chest like a stone wall. The last was leaner, wiry, her gaze sharp like broken glass. There was something ritualistic about the way they stood, each one positioned just far enough apart to suggest choreography. "Look," he said, clearing his throat. "I don't know who you are or what you think this is, but I have the deed." He pulled the folded paper from his jacket and held it up. The tall one didn't even glance at it. "We know," she said. "It's why we prepared the 6th room." The breath left his lungs in a cold rush. 6? There were 5 of them. 5 sisters. 5 bedrooms. He remembered reading that in the survey. His voice dropped, quieter now. "What 6th room?" The first woman stepped off the porch and onto the dirt, her shadow stretching across the space between them. "The one that's been locked since he died," she said. "The one that's yours. We've kept it ready." The wind shifted then, and something inside him, something buried deep and ancient, stirred like it had just remembered what it came here to do. He didn't move as the wind rattled the pine branches above him, the paper deed still crumpled in his fist. The woman in front of him, clearly the oldest, or at least the one they deferred to, stood just a few feet away now, close enough for him to see the fine scars across her forearms, the dirt under her nails, the silver at her temples. She didn't blink. None of them did. "You need to come inside," she said. "It'll make more sense once you see the house." Everything in his body screamed to run. But he didn't. Maybe it was the way she said it, calm, sure, like the decision had already been made and he was just catching up. Or maybe it was something else, something lower, humming under the surface of his skin like recognition. He followed her up the steps. The porch creaked under his weight, but not under theirs. As soon as he crossed the threshold, the scent of wood smoke, pine resin, and something faintly floral wrapped around him like a memory. The house wasn't abandoned. It was lived in, well kept, and far too warm for a place that hadn't had an owner in 2 decades. "We kept it the way he left it," said the 4th sister, the massive one, taller than the doorframe itself. Her voice was soft, a surprising contrast to her size. "Even the dust in your room. We never touched it." He glanced at her. "My room?" The one with the copper hair, wiry, restless, tilted her head like she was amused by the question. It was always going to be yours, she said. He told us that. Said when the time was right, you'd show up. And here you are. Little late, but we're not complaining. The room to the right of the staircase had no door. Inside, he saw tools, thick coats, a wood-burning stove. Evidence of life. 5 lives, to be exact. Your father, who was he? He asked, barely keeping up. I thought the last owner was some old loner named Elijah Dane. The woman leading the way paused in front of a heavy wooden door at the end of the hall. She turned slowly, meeting his gaze. Elijah Dane was our father, she said. He built this place with his bare hands. He lived here, raised us here, trained us here. And when he got sick, he told us the land would bring you. The hallway felt smaller somehow, like the walls were listening. Bring me for what? He asked. I never met him. Never even heard of him before the lawyer called. The 5th sister, quiet until now, finally spoke. Her voice was sharp, clipped. Doesn't matter. Blood or not, he chose you. Left you this land because you were the one. Not a cousin, not some neighbor. You. The oldest woman laid her palm on the door at the end of the hall. This room's been waiting for you, just like we have. He didn't reach for the handle, not yet. You're telling me he raised 5 daughters out here alone, and never told anyone about it? He asked. That's what this is? The copper-haired one leaned against the wall with a smirk. No, he told someone. You, in his way, with land, with instructions, with trust. The words weren't comforting, they were heavy. Like stepping into the second act of a play you didn't audition for. The older woman pushed the door open. Dust swirled in the sunlight, dancing across a room that felt preserved in time. A cot, a small desk, a trunk at the foot of the bed, and something about the way the light hit the floorboards made his breath catch. Carved into the wood, right beneath the bed, were initials. His initials. The same way he used to carve them into school desks as a kid. He stepped forward, hand trembling. How is this possible? He asked. No one answered. Not yet. But behind him, 5 women waited like sentinels in the hallway, like they were guarding a secret that was about to wake up. He stood in the center of the room as the silence expanded around him. The carved initials stared back at him from the floor his own, etched deep into the wood long before he'd ever stepped foot on this land. It made no sense. None of it did. And yet, some stubborn part of his mind refused to deny what his eyes were telling him. The trunk at the foot of the bed creaked as he opened it. Inside, neatly folded, was a canvas jacket that looked about his size. Beneath it, a worn leather satchel. He ran his hand over the flap and felt something hard inside. Papers. Maybe answers. Maybe more questions. He looked over his shoulder, but the sisters hadn't followed him in. They stood in the hallway, still and expectant, like the moment belonged to him alone. He turned back to the room. Every corner felt hand-touched, familiar in a way that should have been impossible. There were nail marks on the windowsill, like someone had gripped it too tightly once. Scratches on the desk that matched the way he used to fidget with a pocket knife as a boy. Things that shouldn't be here. Things that shouldn't be known. He backed out of the room slowly, pulling the satchel with him. I need a drink, he muttered, throat dry. The copper-haired sister laughed under her breath, the sound sharp and knowing. You always say that. The others didn't laugh. They just watched him like a storm rolling over a valley. They moved as he moved, flanking him down the stairs and into the wide, rustic kitchen. A kettle was already steaming on the stove, mugs lined up on the counter. It was like they'd expected this exact pacing of events, like they'd rehearsed it. I don't remember any of you, he said as he sat heavily at the wooden table. I don't remember this place. That's not me in there. It can't be. The oldest sister sat across from him, mug in hand, massive arms resting easily on the table. Memory isn't the only way to belong, she said. Sometimes, the body remembers what the mind forgot. The smallest of the 5, still taller than him by a few inches, leaned forward. Her arms were sinewy and tan, veins like cords under the skin. You were meant for this, she said. Our father always said he wouldn't raise the 6th, that the land would know when it was time. That when the pines turned gold, you'd come walking up the path, asking about a deed you didn't earn. He bristled at that. I paid for the processing. Hired the lawyer. Signed the claim. She shrugged. You just carried out the paperwork. The cabin claimed you a long time ago. The 3rd sister, the largest, bent low to fill a mug and handed it to him. Her hand dwarfed the cup. Her fingers brushed his, and a spark jolted through his spine, hot, foreign, and uninvited. He looked up at her, startled, but she was already turning away. You still haven't told me your names, he said. The leader gave a slow nod. Names have power, she said. But I'll give you ours since you're part of this now. I'm Clara. She gestured to the others in turn. That's June, Wren, Eliza. And the one who hasn't said a word yet, that's Mara. Mara was leaning against the back wall, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. She didn't nod, didn't smile, just watched. Wren, the copper-haired one, chimed in. We each have a place, a role. You were supposed to fill the sixth, but our father passed before he could bring you here. His voice dropped to a whisper. What was I supposed to do? Eliza, the strong one, met his gaze. Not do, be. She tapped her finger against the table once. Be with us, work with us, live with us, build with us. And when the time comes, stay. The words were simple, but behind them, he felt something massive, ancient, and deeply unsettling take root. He was no longer just a man with a deed. He was becoming part of something older than he could explain, and the worst part was some part of him wanted it. He stood in the center of the room, heart thudding in his chest. The carved initials stared up at him from the floor, his initials. The exact way he used to etch them into school desks, into tree bark, without thinking. It made no sense. None of it did. He hadn't been here before, couldn't have. But the scratch marks on the windowsill, the faded smell of cedar and iron and sweat, it all felt hauntingly familiar, like a memory buried so deep even he couldn't reach it. The trunk creaked open under his hand. Inside was a folded canvas jacket and an old satchel, its strap cracked with age. He took it without thinking, like it had always been his. Outside the doorway, the 5 women still waited. Their presence was too large for the hallway, their silence louder than a crowd. They didn't follow him, didn't pressure him. They just stood like they were letting the house do its work. He passed them slowly, the satchel clutched in his grip. Downstairs, the kitchen glowed with firelight. A kettle steamed on the stove. Mugs were already lined on the counter. He hadn't even said he wanted tea. What is this? He asked, setting the satchel down on the table. A cult? A prank? Some kind of performance art? The copper-haired sister let out a dry chuckle. If it is, you're in the lead role. The oldest Clara sat across from him, her arms folded calmly on the table, sleeves pushed to her elbows. The others flanked the room, taking their places like muscle-bound ghosts. He glanced at each one. Towering, thick, strong in a way that wasn't for show. These weren't women who lifted weights for fun. These were women who'd hoisted logs, dragged beasts, laid foundations. You're all... He hesitated, searching for a word that wouldn't offend. Huge, Wren said for him, smirking. We know. You're telling me this cabin's been occupied this whole time? He asked. How is that even legal? Clara nodded toward the satchel. You'll find the paperwork inside. Our father handled it, sealed off the property, said it had to stay untouched until you came. That old resistance surged up in his throat. I didn't even know him. How would he know me? Mara finally spoke, her voice low and cold. He didn't know you. He dreamed you. Drew sketches of your face for years. Said the 6th would come when the land was ready. His skin prickled. The 6th? Eliza stepped forward. There were always supposed to be 6. 5 daughters. And 1 man. He blinked at her. For what? Marriage? June's voice was quiet. Not marriage. Balance. Clara reached for the satchel and pushed it toward him. Start reading, she said. Or run. But if you're meant to stay, the house will tell you. He didn't move. Couldn't. The house felt alive around him. Watching. Waiting. And part of him already knew it had been waiting for him all along. He couldn't sleep. Not with the wind pushing against the walls like it wanted in. Not with the heavy stillness of the house pressing on his chest. He'd barely eaten the stew they set out for dinner. Too many questions. Too many eyes watching him like he might vanish if they blinked. Around midnight, he rose from the creaky cot in the 6th room and walked barefoot into the hall. The house was silent, but not empty. It was never empty. The air held a tension he couldn't name, like something sacred had been disturbed. The hallway stretched longer than it had earlier. He passed by the rooms he hadn't dared to explore before. One door was cracked open. Inside, the flicker of a lantern revealed a simple bed, clothes folded neatly. A rifle hung above the window. Someone's space. Eliza's, maybe. The next room held weights made of stone and iron, ropes coiled in the corner, the scent of sweat and pine sharp in the air. That had to be Mara's. Another room was full of books, stacks of them, some in foreign languages, some handwritten. June? No labels, no signs. But each space radiated its occupant. He wasn't supposed to be here, and yet he kept walking. The last door was different. Dust covered the doorknob, and when he pushed it open, the hinges groaned like they hadn't moved in years. The room was spotless empty save for a bed with clean sheets, a handmade quilt, and a small dresser with one candle melted halfway down. No clothes, no books, no personal signs, just stillness. It looked like someone had prepared it for a guest who never came, or someone who was always meant to. He stepped in. The air felt colder here, more aware. He sat on the edge of the bed and ran his hand across the quilt. It was stitched with patterns, 6 trees, each taller than the last. 5 stitched in dark green thread, 1 in golden brown, the thread frayed and fading. His chest tightened. The symbolism was too clear. "They've been waiting for me," he muttered under his breath, not sure if he was horrified or honored. He turned to the dresser and opened the top drawer. Inside was a single object, a ring, iron, simple, unpolished. He picked it up. The weight of it was unnatural, like it had been forged for something ancient. Behind him, the floor creaked. He turned. Wren stood in the doorway, arms crossed, leaning casually against the frame. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, voice low. He nodded. "Who was this room for?" She smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You." "But it's been 2 decades," he said. "How could you know I'd come?" Her eyes held his. "We didn't, but we believed." She walked away, leaving him in silence. He stared at the ring in his palm. The bed, the room, the waiting, it was all too much. And yet, as he slid the ring onto his finger, it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting, too. The morning light cut through the pines in thin gold lines, filtering across the cabin floor like something sacred. He stood at the edge of the porch, boots on, coat half-buttoned, trying to decide if today was the day he walked away. But the ring on his finger iron, cold, unshaped, felt heavier than it should. Like it didn't want to be removed, like it had roots. Behind him, the screen door creaked open, and Clara stepped out carrying 2 steaming mugs. "Coffee," she said simply, handing him one. "Strong, bitter, like you." He managed a dry smile and took a sip. It was perfect. She sat beside him, her massive frame moving with the grace of someone used to command. "You were in the 6th room last night," she said without asking. "Wren told us." He nodded, unsure what to say. The silence stretched. "You look just like him," she added quietly. "That's why it hit us so hard when you arrived. The same eyes. Same way you lean on your right leg without realizing it." He turned to face her. "Elijah?" She nodded. "Our father. You're not his blood, we know that. But you carry something of him. Maybe more than he did near the end." He didn't know what to say to that. He'd grown up in a foster system, bounced around until he was old enough to stop needing anyone. Elijah Dane had never been a name spoken in his world. And yet, his face, his habits were somehow reflected in the memory of a man he'd never met. "Why did he leave this to me?" he asked. "Why not one of you?" Clara looked out at the trees. "Because we weren't meant to stay here forever without him. He built something strange, something powerful. This land isn't just property. It's bonded. To him. To us. And now, apparently, to you." The front door opened again, and the rest of the sisters filed out one by one. June with a loaf of fresh bread and a knife. Eliza carrying chopped firewood like it weighed nothing. Wren barefoot, already chewing something. Mara last, silent, unreadable. They all moved around him like gravity had shifted to pull them toward the porch. Toward him. "He didn't leave instructions," June said, slicing the bread. "But he left signs. Enough for us to know this place wasn't meant to be ours alone." Eliza dropped the firewood beside the steps with a grunt. "You showing up now, 20 years after he died. That's not coincidence. That's prophecy." "Don't say prophecy," Wren muttered. "Makes it sound culty." Clara ignored them. "We didn't expect you to be him. We expected you to be something familiar. Something that could complete what he started." "And what was that exactly?" he asked, heart thudding. Mara answered this time, voice like gravel. "A family. But not the kind you find. The kind you build." He looked at the 5 of them, different shapes, strengths, eyes full of memory, and something in his chest twisted. Not fear, not desire. Something older, like he'd been born with a shape missing inside him. And now, somehow, it was starting to fill. He didn't tell them what he found until the next evening. They were all out back near the stream, hauling timber for a new shed. He'd offered to help, but Clara told him to rest. "You've got more adjusting to do than we do," she'd said, wiping sawdust from her jaw. So while they worked, he wandered pacing the creaking boards of the house with no real aim, following a hunch that had been crawling up his spine since he found the ring. He ended up back in the 6th room, alone. The floor felt different now, less like a room, more like a box. like something was waiting to be pried open. He ran his palm along the edges of the floorboards beneath the bed, tapping, pressing, until one gave way with a muted click. The plank shifted. Beneath it lay a bundle wrapped in waxed cloth, dry despite the years. He pulled it out carefully and sat cross-legged on the floor as if guided by instinct. When he unwrapped it, there it was, a thick, leather-bound journal. No lock, no title, just a blackened cover worn smooth at the edges and tied with a frayed cord. His hands trembled as he opened the first page. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate. The first line stopped his breath. If you're reading this, then the land chose you too. He flipped to the next entry. This place isn't just soil and timber. It holds memory. It holds promise. I built this for 6, but I only ever raised 5. The last was always meant to find us. He read for an hour, lost in Elijah Dane's meticulous script notes about rituals with the land, about dreams he'd had, visions, warnings. But mostly, it was about the girls, his daughters, each one trained in something essential. One for body, one for food, one for history, one for defense, one for healing. He had raised them like roots around a tree that hadn't yet sprouted. And then there were pages about him, not by name, just a figure. The 6th won't come through blood. He'll come through need. He won't know why he's drawn here, only that he is. When the pines begin to rust, when the old road cracks, when the 6th room breathes again, that's when he'll arrive. His skin went cold. He glanced at the open window. The road out front, he remembered seeing it cracked, full of moss. The pines, how they shimmered golden now, despite summer refusing to end. It was all there, written before he was born. By the time he looked up, the sun was almost gone. He stepped onto the porch with the journal under his arm. All 5 sisters were already there. Wren looked at the book. You found it. He nodded. You knew it was there? June answered. We didn't hide it. We just waited for the one it was meant for to find it. He looked down at the journal, then back up at the 5 of them lined up like sentinels, watching the sun disappear. I think, he said slowly, your father might have been completely insane. Mara gave the faintest smile. Yeah, she said. But he wasn't wrong. They lit the bonfire just after twilight. No one said it was for him, but it was. The logs stacked with precision, the dried herbs tossed in for smell, the wide circle of flat stones arranged like a ritual site. None of it was casual. He stood on the outer ring, clutching the journal like it might fly away, while the sisters moved with quiet coordination. Wren tended the flames, coaxing them higher with each breath of wind. June passed around clay mugs of something sweet and smoky. Mara sharpened a blade for no clear reason. Eliza carried logs with one arm like they were twigs. Clara just watched him, unmoving, like she was waiting for the right moment to speak. He couldn't take it anymore. Enough, he said, stepping forward. What is this, really? What do you mean I'm the 6th? Why did Elijah spend half his life preparing for someone he didn't even know? Clara didn't flinch. Because the land told him someone would come, someone who could anchor what he built. The rest of us, we were the foundation, but we weren't the point. The words hit like a slap. You're saying I'm the point? That I was supposed to just drop into your lives and what? Fix things? No, Eliza said, standing beside the fire, the orange light dancing over her face. Not fix. Fulfill, June added. We were raised with purpose. Each of us taught to master a part of life here. But without someone to bind it all together, it's just survival. You were the missing pattern. The house breathes different with you in it, Wren muttered. You think we don't feel it? He looked around the fire at each of them. They were strong, capable, terrifying in their own ways. They didn't need him to survive. That much was clear. But they wanted him there, and not out of weakness, out of design. He didn't just build a home, Clara said. He built a bond, a system, a family that functioned like the seasons. We rise, we grow, we defend. But we weren't complete. Not without the one who could live in all the rooms. The one who wasn't just born to be here but drawn. His voice came out softer than he meant it to. And what happens if I leave? Mara looked up from her sharpening stone. Then we keep living. But we do it as 5. Incomplete. Hollow. June shrugged. We've done it before. We could do it again. But it would never feel right. The journal felt heavier in his hand. He thought about the room, the ring, the quilt with 6 trees, and how nothing in his life had ever felt like it fit until this place. You're not just the inheritor, Clara said, her voice quieter now. You're the one we waited for. You don't owe us anything. But you do owe yourself the truth. He looked into the fire, the heat rising through his boots, and realized the only thing more terrifying than staying was leaving. He didn't sleep that night, not because he couldn't, but because something in him refused to. He sat alone on the porch until the fire dwindled to coals and the stars cut sharp lines across the sky. The journal rested beside him, unopened, but its weight pressed against his thoughts like a heartbeat. Every time he glanced at the 6th ring on the quilt in his room, at the iron band around his finger, at the way the sisters moved around each other like threads braided around a center, he knew he wasn't just here to own the land. He was here to become part of it. By morning, he had made his decision. The sisters were already awake. Of course they were. June was tending the goats near the edge of the clearing. Eliza chopped wood without pause, sweat already glistening on her collarbone. Wren was on the roof, hammer in hand, tightening the beams. Mara stood in the field with a rifle slung low, scanning the tree line. Clara emerged from the house last, brushing flour from her forearms. "Well?" she asked, as if she'd been waiting for his answer since before he even arrived. He nodded. "I'm staying." No ceremony followed. No applause. Just a silence so complete it made the trees seem to lean in to listen. Clara's lips curved, not a smile exactly, more like a solemn acknowledgement. "Then we begin," she said. They gathered at the edge of the land, where the fence met the woods. Clara carried a small box. Inside were 6 iron nails, each thick as a finger and blackened by fire. "These aren't for building," she explained. "They're for binding." One by one, each sister pricked her palm with a nail and pressed it into the soil at her feet. When it was his turn, he hesitated, but only for a moment. The iron was warm in his hand, as if it had been waiting for him too. He pressed the tip into his palm, let the blood well, and drove it into the dirt. Clara knelt beside him, her voice low. "This land knows us now. It knows you. It remembers pain. It remembers promise. And now it will remember this." The 6 nails formed a circle, blood darkening the earth around them, a pact sealed not with paper, but with skin and soil. Back at the house, everything felt different. The 6th room no longer felt like a stranger's space, it felt lived in. His. The ring on his finger no longer burned. It rested. And as night fell again, he found himself standing in the kitchen with 5 women who no longer looked like strangers or threats. "We don't expect perfection," Wren said, handing him a bowl. "But we expect truth." He nodded. "That I can give you." Mara raised her mug. "Then let's make it real." They ate together, laughed louder, and when the dishes were cleared, no one went to their separate rooms. The house had 6 doors, and for the first time in 20 years, all of them were open. Morning came quietly, without fanfare. No thunder, no signs from the trees, just light, pale and soft, seeping through the curtains of the 6th room, his room. The bed was warm, the sheets tangled, the scent of wood smoke and lavender lingering in the air. He lay there for a while, staring at the beams above him, listening to the house breathe. It did breathe, he was sure of it now, not in a magical way, but in the way living things do when they are finally whole. When he stepped into the hallway, he noticed something different. A lantern hung outside his door, lit. Its soft orange glow flickered like a heartbeat. None of the other rooms had one. It hadn't been there the night before. It wasn't a decoration. It was a signal. A confirmation. The 6th room, once sealed in dust and silence, had joined the rhythm of the house. He was no longer a guest. He was woven in. Downstairs, the sisters were already busy. June knelt in the garden rows, planting squash, her broad back streaked with dirt. Mara oiled the rifle by the porch steps. Wren was halfway up an old apple tree, plucking fruit like a cat stalking the wind. Eliza chopped wood with the same merciless precision. Clara stirred a pot over the fire, her sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, humming something old and off-key. They didn't stop when he stepped out. They didn't need to. He was already part of the pattern. He walked over to Clara. "Morning," he said, voice still gravelly from sleep. She handed him a wooden spoon. "Taste." He did. It was perfect. "We've got 3 more irrigation lines to dig," she said. "And the south fence still has that lean." He nodded. "I'll handle it." She smiled not with her mouth but with her eyes. Good. That afternoon, he dug until his arms burned, worked until his skin turned red beneath the sun, and when he collapsed beneath the oak near the stream, he didn't feel like a man fighting to belong. He felt like someone who had always belonged and just needed to sweat it out of himself to remember. When he opened his eyes, Wren stood over him, holding out a flask. "We all break the first week," she said. "But most people break the wrong way." He drank. It burned. "And me?" he asked. She knelt beside him, her voice softer. "You cracked open in all the right places. That night, They sat on the expanded porch, 6 of them now. One circle, one home. The moonlight caught the iron ring on his finger, and it didn't feel like a shackle anymore. It felt like truth. Clara raised a glass. "To the 6th room," she said. They all drank. No one explained. No one needed to. The 6th room had a light again, and inside it lived a man who had come looking for property but found purpose, family, and a kind of love that didn't fit any map. The land hadn't just accepted him, it had chosen him.